Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with a Zeri updated complete guide, of course for patch 6.c onwards, and without further ado, I'm going to refer you guys to the basic guide I'll link up in the cards above for her skills, leveling order, tips and tricks, as well as a couple of combos. But with that said, now let's take a look at the items, runes, and spells. So for Zeri, quite a bit has changed, of course, because I used to think that the best build is Rune and Hurricane second. I still think that's a great build, but now I think just rushing full crit is better. I'm going to explain more on that in the gameplay, but let's go over the build and what exactly it is first. So first off, you're going to start off with Berserker's Greaves, right? It's going to give you 35% attack speed, mainly it's what you're after. Now, why are you going for attack speed boots instead of going for Gluttonous Greaves? Basically, it's because your first couple of items don't really give attack speed. In fact, none of your items really give attack speed, except Runans at the very end, or 15% attack speed from Bloodthirster. So you're going to need that attack speed from your boots, right? Otherwise, you're going to be lacking attack speed, and you're going to be attacking real slow. So first item, of course, is going to be Bloodthirster. Of course, gives you the AD, the physical vamp, as well as that lifeline shield. Just the best, item, best, ADC item if you can build it. Essence Weaver is coming in next. This basically is like the Solari Charge Blade replacement, but it's kind of better, right? Because it gives you AD, gives you ability haste, you get the Spell Blade passive, and of course you can store up to 3 charges, and then you unload all of them onto the enemy, and you also get the mana restore. Then it's pretty standard. You're going to go for IE for the increased crit damage, as well as going for Maul Reminder for the Armor Pen and the Grievous Wounds. And finally, your last item, I like to go for Runan's Hurricane, because I still think spreading your attacks amongst enemies is still very important. But if you don't like Runans, you have a couple options. Now, firstly, you could go for defensive options. For example, things like Maw, GA, Twin Guard, even Black Cleaver, which you're going to be able to shred enemies with and also give you tanky stats. And then you also have another option, right, which is going for Soul Transfer. So now Soul Transfer is actually very popular as a last item among the top players. But I think it's an okay item, because with Soul Transfer, you will do more damage than Runans overall, and you do more single target damage, right? But I like to go for Runans to do spread damage onto multiple people, because I feel that the most of the time you're focusing the tank, right? And I don't want to be doing burst damage to the tank. I want to be doing spread damage onto the people behind the tank, beside the tank, things like that, right? I don't want to be using my Soul Transfer on to tanks necessarily, right? But with Soul Transfer, you will be doing more damage overall, so it's kind of depending on what you want, right? So with the runes, I go for Conquer just for the just for the stacking AD as well as the Omnivamp. Now, you could go for Lethal Tempo considering how you're lacking attack speed, but I think it's just a more efficient solution to get Gluttonous Greaves and go for Conquer, so you don't have to invest into Lethal Tempo. Then, of course, you have the standard ADC loadout for the rest, and with the spells, you want to go for Flash together with Cleanse if there is CC, otherwise Ghost is amazing. If you need it, Barrier or Exhaust works as well. But with all that said, now let's move on to discussing the gameplay. Okay, so let's jump into the gameplay itself, but before we go into too much detail, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as usual. Any questions, queries, or remarks, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Of course, I will be sure to address them. So we've got a couple of discussion points for Zeri, but once again, this is going to be one of those videos where there's action at the beginning, so I'm going to hold off on it for a little bit until the action passes. So here you can see the enemy team of Zyra and Caitlyn are stepping up. We're trading with them. And Soraka is actually very strong at level 1, exhausts the Caitlyn. Caitlyn's going down real low. I'm just going on her, she barriers, but I'm basically full HP. There's no way she survives here. I run her down. Zyra flashes back toward me for some reason, and I'm able to kill her as well. So overall, it's a 1-for-2 trade, with basically everyone's summoner spells burned except my cleanse, because I didn't get ignited, nor did I get CC'd by Zyra, so there's no reason for me to ignite. And this actually gives no reason for me to cleanse, sorry. This gives me enough gold to back and pick up my boots, which of course is going to be a pretty nice spike for myself. So, now into the couple of discussion points I want to talk about. So firstly is, how strong is Zeri now, and how strong is she compared to the previous version? Now, when I first took a look at the patch notes, I thought Zeri was going to be like OP because of the buffs they gave on like her. They did remove her passive, but they buffed things like her Q and her E by a lot, and I saw the ult buff as a pretty big buff as well. So I thought she was going to be a lot stronger than what she was. Now, in reality, I actually think she's very similar or even weaker. Now, why do I say that? Well, the Q buff is really nice, the E buff is really nice, but the two main discussion points I want to talk about is the passive and the ult. So first, let's talk about the ult. right? So the ult, basically the main change you have to the ult is it used to, like in a simplified version, it used to basically be a fixed duration, and with every takedown it increases the duration by a couple of seconds, right? And currently it has unlimited duration, but the duration increases by like I think like half a second or 1 second every time you like auto attack someone. So to basically with the last one, you can kite around fights easily without attacking people, and then you can attack people when you want. Whereas with this one, you're sort of semi-forced to keep attacking people to keep your ultimate active, which in theory, the ceiling is a lot higher because your ulti can be active for a lot longer of a duration. But on the other hand, the floor is a lot lower as well, because if you ult and then you can't actually hit anyone because everyone runs away, sort of like how if Swain ults and everyone runs away, his ult is not very useful, then you will be in a situation where your ult is basically gone and then the enemy team re-engages, and then you're going to be in a little bit of not trouble, but you're not going to be dealing as much damage because your ult is not active. So this makes her a lot harder to play, because with the ult at a fixed duration, you can sort of play it how you wanna. But with this one, you kind of have to commit fully when you ult. And of course, whenever you ult, you're committing fully anyway, just based on the fact you're expending your ult. But what I mean by that is that when you ult, you really have to position up and you have to sort of attack people, which is pretty much forcing you to do something you may not want to do. And otherwise, you're going to have the detrimental effect of basically not having an ult. So it definitely makes her harder to play. But definitely, you know, lower, basically has a lower floor and a higher, not lower floor, but yeah, it's a lower, it definitely has a higher ceiling, and it's like but the potential negative is also a lot worse, right? So yeah. Next thing I want to go over is her passive, right? So I thought that, you know, losing her passive of stealing the shields and the movement speed was like, it was not great, but I thought that the compensation you get in terms of your ulti being buffed and your E being buffed and your Q being buffed would be worth it. Now overall, is the ulti a buff? I used to think it was, but as we just covered, it's debatable whether or not it actually is a buff. I think it's like maybe even, right? So at most it's like an even kind of adjustment, at best it's a buff. So it's not really a buff. The Q buff, it's nice, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. Like reducing cooldown and giving you mana back is alright, because Zeri's mana was never really the issue. So I think it's kind of a meh change. Of course, her her E change is a pretty big change, as we now go all in here because we have Vi. We're in. Unfortunately, we die to ignite here, so it is what it is. But we overall get both kills here, and only at the cost of my life, so it's not too bad. So the E change is a pretty big buff, but is it worth losing the passive over? I think not. So overall, I think Zeri got slightly weaker after the rework. Why? Now, stealing shields is actually a pretty big deal, right? When you think about how much shielding there is in the game, gargoyles, even the tower shields and the nexus shields, enchanters, a lot of champions have shields. Set, Shen, you know, of course you have the shielders, Karma, Lulu, you know, Lux. So many shielding champions. Stealing shields actually gives you a lot of extra survivability, a lot of extra health, which is a big deal. But what's an even bigger deal is the movement speed, right? So when you're shielded, you gain movement speed, and I think that's the biggest nerf to Zeri, is losing the movement speed, right? Because I have felt that something was wrong with Zeri when I played her like for quite a number of matches. I couldn't really put my finger on what was wrong, as I get completely caught out here, and basically Swain flashes in and tries to kill me on the tower. I'm trying to survive, but I can't. My bad for getting caught on the Swain hand. But yeah, so losing the movement speed on the passive is really a very big deal, right? Losing the movement speed is really like, it's really like you lose so much of your fighting capability, because with the extra movement speed you can walk in and out of fights a lot more easily. And Zeri is that kind of well, not a battle mage, but it's like that kind of battle ADC, I guess. Sort of like the Kai'Sas and the Vaynes, where you don't have the longest range in the world, but you do a lot of sustained DPS at like close range, right? So with that movement speed, it was very important for her to dodge skill shots, move in and out of fights, you know, just general that mobility was very important. And without that movement speed from your passive, she definitely feels a little bit worse. So if you were to ask me overall, was Zeri's rework beneficial or detrimental? I'm leaning towards the detrimental side. So I preferred the old Zeri, which actually surprised me because, as I said, my initial thoughts were that she got better. So here, now that we've done with that discussion point, let's talk about this dragon fight first, where Amumu's trying to solo the dragon. We get the ult onto a couple of people, and here you see we're just blasting whoever is in range. Now we're going to blast the Swain. We're going to flash forward. A couple low HP bars, we get a kill. Riven is really, really tanky. We're just blasting her. We still have the ult active, of course. Put the ward down. She turns with the ulti. I'm now kiting back. Soraka has to help me out a little bit here with Shieldbow pops as well. And honestly, if not for Soraka and Shieldbow, Riven would have killed me there. But thankfully, we have the OP Bloodthirster. I call it Shieldbow because whenever I see the shield, I call it Shieldbow. But we have the OP Bloodthirster shield, we have the Soraka healing, and it ends up just being an even trade because Riven does so much damage that Soraka actually just dies. But thankfully, we are able to secure the kill on her eventually. So the next discussion point I want to talk about is the build, right? Talking about Runan's second versus going for Runan's as a last item, right? So there are a couple of pros and cons to going for both, right? Now, with going for the build that I recommend here, you spike a lot harder on 3 and 4 items, and then of course on 5 items as well, right? So Zeri of course is a 3 item ADC, like many ADC. So with the full crit build, which is this build, you spike a lot harder on you know, 2, 3, 4 items, right? Just because you're building all crit items, right? With Runan's is not a crit item. So if you go for Runan's as a second item, you're going to delay your crit by a little bit. And also, it's also going to make your build a bit awkward. Because when you go for BT into Runan's, your next 3 items are likely going to be IE, Mole Reminder, as well as going for Soul Transfer. So now, all of them are kind of trash as a third item, right? With IE, you don't have enough crit in your build yet for it to be a very good third item. With Mole Reminder, the enemy team is not really tanky enough for it to be a very good third item, right? And doesn't give you very amazing stats. With Soul Transfer, you don't really have enough crit yet to make Soul Transfer do a lot of damage. So you kind of have a dilemma of which item you go for third, right? So it's kind of just a general issue, right? Of what do you go for third, right? If you go for Runan second. So I tried Soul Transfer as a third item. It's kind of alright. You know, I tried IE and I tried Mole Reminder. I kind of still up in the air of what I think is the best third item. So we'll talk a bit more about that when I make the video on that build. But for now, this is the build I think is the best. Just going for full crit, then into Runans, or then into whatever else you want. I think it's probably the way to go. And I think the top players are also going for this kind of build at the moment. So that's probably the best way to go for Zeri at the moment. So now we can focus a little bit more on the gameplay now that we've talked a lot about discussion of the old versus the new Zeri and also about what's the best build now. Now here, the enemy team are slowly funneling into this choke point as we kind of almost caught out Riven, but now the enemy team is coming to back her up. Looks like a fight is going to break out here, one way or the other, and I'm just trying to farm the Krugs before that happens. Here, nothing too much is happening. Everyone's kind of hovering aggressively, so I really think something's going to kick off. Irelia goes in and kills the Zyra and dies eventually, but does a lot of damage before she does so. Now I'm going to flash forward, get the kill onto the Riven. Amumu with the ulti. I cleanse after the CC is already over, not sure what I'm doing there. And here I'm just continuously hitting Bloodthirster procs onto the Caitlyn, and I don't want to go any further. But yeah, that was a horrible cleanse by me, by the way. I cleansed after the entire CC duration was already over. Let's not talk about that. But here I'm interested in getting this tower, right? So there I check if anyone's backing in that bush. No one is there. Zyra is now coming back from the base. But I do believe we have enough time to get the tower before she's able to come and stop us. So there we go. We secure the tower. And we can now back on off. Getting the resets, and now we can build towards IE. Now you could go for more reminders third item as well if the enemy team is really tanky. Now in this case, the enemy team is decently tanky. Like you have, you know, Riven and Swain who are kind of tanky-ish damage dealers, and then you have Amumu who's building full tank. So more reminder here would be okay, but of course I love to go for IE just for the pure damage. Right, so here Dragon has spawned, and for some reason Zyra just flashed in there, so a bit of a wasted flash there. I'm not really interested in Dragon itself, although it could be Molten Soul for my team, but I'm more interested in just getting damage off on the enemy team and looking for a fight. So Riven just gets completely destroyed by Soraka's silence, just dies immediately. And here my team is going in. I spot the opportunity to go onto the Swain in the backline. We get the kill onto Swain, but now we get engaged on by Amumu. Shieldbow pops, or rather Bloodthirster pops, and now I'm running away, kiting out the Amumu. Amumu is not taking a lot of damage, though I tried to turn and go for the Zyra, who's really low, but I can't survive long enough to do that. Zyra is still 1 HP, Caitlyn pretty low as well. Amumu eventually dies. Now Lux is the only one left alive on my team, and she's up against a Caitlyn, and Zyra backs away and then sees Zyra backing, goes for the ulti onto the Zyra, hits it. Comet, I think, takes the kill, or not Comet. What does she have? Vandal Fantasy, I think, takes the kill, because Zyra died after a short delay, and Lux is able to pick up the kill using the last of her mana, and secures the wave and goes back. Now, in the meanwhile, I'm very close to getting IE, so I'm just looking for any farm that I can get to hopefully finish the IE, which of course is going to be a very, very major spike. At this point in time, I have the most goal in the game, followed very closely behind by Amumu, who's putting in a shift for his team. He's 7-4-7, with the most kills on his team, and definitely the most tanky member of his team as well. So here I'm just disabling the Caitlyn trap since she's nowhere in sight. Crystal Rose Caitlyn rampant on the Rift after that Crystal Rose event. Everyone wants to show off their new skin. And here I have IE at long last, so I'm going to back and pick up IE, hoping my team doesn't get into a fight while this happens. Amumu is now hex gating over to the Baron side. A fight is semi-breaking out, which is to be expected since Baron is up. Vi is on the wrong side of the map though. Vi is now coming over with the hex gate, and it's probably going to be a 5v5 at this point. Here we're just getting mid lane priority, which is not very successful. We're going to have to head on over to try to contest the Baron. Now, Riven is in a really strange position, right? Because she's a bit isolated from her team. But if we commit onto Riven, which is what we're doing here, the enemy team could always turn onto Baron. Now, thankfully, they don't actually do that. And here I'm maintaining my distance because Amumu has not yet ulted. I ult at the same time he does. So now I'm just stacking the stacks on my ult. I see Swain. Again, he's not very tanky, so I'm going to be able to kill him. Now, I have my flash, but I don't necessarily want to flash over the wall unless I see an opportunity like this where enemies are really low. I get the kill onto Riven, hopping over, getting the kill onto the Caitlyn. Now I'm trying to go for the Amumu. He's really tanky, but I believe I can catch him eventually. Lux actually finishes the kill there. And now only Zyra is left alive. So I'm thinking, with Vi being up in 10 seconds, this could be a good time to go for Baron. So unfortunately, the problem here is that I'm tanking the Baron, which means that I do less damage to Baron. But if Soraka tanks the Baron, she can't really tank the Baron because she's really, really squishy. So here, I'm tanking the Baron initially. Now, Baron changes aggro to Soraka, and now Soraka is taking a lot of damage. Right? She's taking a ton of damage, and she can't tank the Baron any longer without getting executed. So instead, I have to now tank the Baron again, and eventually we get it with Vi coming in just for a, well, I guess a semi-KS on the Baron, because it was only 100 HP, she just dashed in and smited it. But anyways, whatever, we get the Baron as a team. And with that, we can now reset, spending the gold we got from the kills with the Baron Empowered Recall. So we're about to get our Mole Reminder. Now we just want to basically be pushing the waves, of course, with the Baron, the most logical thing to do. So we're just going to kind of AFK group in mid. Dragon's 30 seconds away, not very important. So now Amumu is kind of face checking here, but Amumu is really tanky, nothing much is going to happen. However, this allows me to full stack my Conqueror. It wastes his ult because there's no one to follow up from his ult. So here, unfortunately, I walk a little bit into the Zyra ult, not very good. Now here I try to ult, but unfortunately Amumu dies and Swain is in stasis, so I don't actually ult anybody, which means that I don't get the ult at all. So it's a complete waste of ult, which is a little bit unfortunate. Now Caitlyn there getting caught out, dashing forward, just executing her. Riven gets silenced, gets completely destroyed, and with that, we are going to win the fight, and with that one fight with the Baron, we're going to win the game. So all pretty nice Zeri gameplay, 10-3 and 10. And as usual, I'm going to leave you guys with the stats. So, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.